Sometimes the quietest moments carry the loudest truths. This story reveals how a life built on familiarity can suddenly feel like a stranger's house, how tiny shifts and overlooked details can unravel everything, and how discovering the truth can be both devastating and liberating. It's a journey of realizing when love has faded, betrayal has settled in, and the only way forward is to reclaim yourself. Hey friend, please subscribe. 1 second for you. Big deal for me. I woke up in the middle of the night with a strange, overwhelming feeling. It wasn't fear, it wasn't anxiety. It was more like a deep, gnawing sense of dread that settled in my chest and refused to let go. I could feel something was wrong, but I didn't know what. It wasn't the kind of feeling that makes you jump to conclusions. It was a quiet certainty, a whisper deep inside me that something had already shifted, and I had missed it. I remember lying there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, trying to find a reason for this unease. There was no argument, no fight, nothing that should have made me feel this way. Life was, in many ways, ordinary, but something in the air had changed. I just couldn't pinpoint what it was. Her name is Iris, my wife. I should probably tell you that right from the start, because she was the one I thought I knew better than anyone else. And that's where the problem began. I thought I knew her. The first sign, or rather the first sign I chose to ignore, came a few months ago. It was so subtle, I didn't even realize I was ignoring it until everything fell apart. It was her smile. Not the way she smiled, but the way she didn't smile anymore. You know the smile I'm talking about. The one that you give someone when you're really happy to see them. The one that lights up your whole face and shows more than just a gesture of politeness. Iris's smile had faded. Not all at once, but just a little bit every day, until one day I woke up and realized that it was gone. I tried to dismiss it, of course. I was busy with work. She had her own things to deal with. Everyone gets busy. I told myself I was being paranoid, or maybe just imagining things. But when I looked at her, I felt like I was seeing a version of Iris that didn't belong to me anymore. She was there, but she wasn't really with me. She was distant, her eyes were far away, and there were moments when I would catch her staring at her phone with a blank expression, as if waiting for something. That was the first time I felt the crack in our life, but it was small, and I convinced myself that everything was fine. I ignored it. The real unraveling began one afternoon when I was running an errand and came home earlier than expected. I had just parked the car in the driveway when I saw her standing in the window. I should have just walked in and gone about my day, but there was something in the way she was standing that made me pause. She was looking out the window, her back to the door. But she wasn't just standing there. She was on the phone, whispering, like she didn't want to be overheard. I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe she was talking to a friend. Maybe she was making plans. I shouldn't have felt suspicious, but something in the way she kept glancing toward the door made me stop. I waited a moment, standing in the doorway, watching her, as if I were a stranger. I should have walked in, greeted her, but I stood frozen. And in that moment, she said something that shattered the veil of normalcy I had been clinging to for months. I can't do this anymore. I can't go back to him. It's over. The words were barely audible, almost a whisper, but they hit me like a punch to the stomach. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. My legs were shaking, but I couldn't move. I wasn't sure if she had even noticed that I was there. And for a split second, I considered walking away, pretending I hadn't heard anything. But the words had already buried themselves in my mind. I can't go back to him. It was like an explosion in my head. Him? Who was she talking about? I stayed silent, waiting for her to say more, but she didn't. There was a pause, then I heard her say, "It's too late now. I just need to let go." She hung up the phone, and my heart pounded in my chest. I stayed in that doorway for what felt like an eternity, not knowing what to do. What could I do? I wanted to shout, to demand answers, but I felt paralyzed. I didn't want to confront her just yet. I needed to understand what I had just heard. So I waited. I waited until she came downstairs, and when she saw me standing there, her face went pale. I don't know what she saw in my eyes, but I could see the sudden panic on her face. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to. I already knew what I had to do. I had to ask her, but the words wouldn't come. I couldn't speak. Instead, I just stared at her, feeling like the ground beneath me was falling away. I'm not proud of what happened next. I should have confronted her immediately. I should have demanded an explanation. But something about the way she stood there, frozen, terrified, like a deer caught in headlights, made me hesitate. Instead, I just walked away. I didn't want to hear her explanation. Not yet. I needed time to process what I had just heard, what I had just discovered. But that wasn't the end of it. It wasn't just a one-off mistake. No, this was the beginning of everything changing. The beginning of a spiral that neither of us could stop. As I left the house that day, my mind was racing. Who was this him? Was it someone from her past? Was it someone new? Was it a relationship I had no idea about? There was only one way to find out, and I didn't know if I was ready for it. But deep down, I knew I had to know the truth, even if it destroyed everything. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not a single second. My body was lying in bed, but my mind kept pacing. Over and over, those words played in my head. Her voice, whispering like a confession not meant for me. I can't go back to him. It's over. It was a simple sentence, really, but it held the weight of everything I feared. I started questioning everything. Every dinner she came home late. Every time she said she was just tired. Every kiss that felt like a routine. I went down a mental list of her recent behavior, and suddenly all the puzzle pieces I had brushed aside were snapping together. And I hated myself for not seeing it sooner. But here's the part that really messed me up. I still didn't know who she was talking to. Or about. Was it me? Was I the one she couldn't go back to? Or was she referring to someone else? Someone from her past? Or maybe someone she'd never left to begin with? I needed answers. But not from her. So I did something I'm not proud of. I waited until she went to the shower the next morning, and I grabbed her phone from the dresser. I know. It was a breach of trust. But the truth is, I already knew that trust was broken. I was just trying to find the wreckage. The first thing I noticed? Her messages were squeaky clean. Too clean. Like someone had been wiping down the crime scene. But I wasn't looking for messages. I went straight to her voice memos. I don't know what led me there. Call it instinct. But as soon as I opened the app, I found a file labeled Meeting Notes, Wednesday. Except the timestamp. It was from Sunday. She never worked Sundays. I hesitated, then I hit play. At first, it was silent. Just background noise. Then her voice. Soft, nervous. So, I've made up my mind. I'm done pretending. I'm done going home and acting like he means anything to me anymore. She was talking about me. She had to be. He's not a bad person. He's just there. He's background noise. A habit. I don't even feel guilty anymore. That sentence broke something in me. I don't even feel guilty anymore. She wasn't crying. She wasn't torn up about it. She was cold. Calm. Like she had already moved on emotionally and just forgot to send me the memo. And then came the part one didn't expect. Another voice. A man's voice. Quiet, but close. He asked her if she was scared I'd find out. She laughed. She laughed. If he had any spine left, he would have left me months ago. But he won't. He never does. I paused the recording there. I couldn't listen to the rest. I couldn't breathe. The worst part? She was right. I hadn't left. I'd ignored the signs. I made excuses. I believed the best in her even when the truth was rotting right under my nose. She didn't just cheat. She stopped loving me and stayed out of pity. Out of convenience. And now, the only thing I could think about was whether she'd ever truly loved me at all, or if I was always just the background noise. I put her phone back where I found it. I didn't say anything. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Because now I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't about infidelity. This was about the slow, silent murder of trust. And I had just found the weapon. The next morning, I noticed something strange, something so minor, it would have slipped past me any other day. A red sweater. Thick wool, folded neatly on the hallway chair. I hadn't seen it before. Definitely not mine. And Iris hated red. She said it made her look washed out, whatever that meant. But now it was here, and it smelled like men's cologne. I stood there staring at it for way too long. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Maybe it belonged to her brother. Maybe someone left it during a visit I'd forgotten. But deep down, I knew exactly what it meant. It was the first physical trace of him. Until now, he was just a voice in a recording, a shadow in a conversation. But this sweater, it was real. It was here, in our home. That thought chilled me more than anything. Iris came downstairs minutes later. She didn't see me at first. She was on her phone, smiling. But as soon as she looked up and noticed what I was holding, her whole body tensed. "Where'd you find that?" she asked. Not nervously, not defensively, flatly. Like she already knew I had it, and just needed confirmation. "In the hallway," I said. "Is it yours?" She didn't answer. She just walked over, took the sweater from my hands, and said, "I'll put it away." Not whose it was. Not why it was here. Just that. I followed her to the laundry room in silence. She stuffed it into a basket, slammed the lid, and turned to leave like nothing happened. That was it. No explanation. No apology. No effort to pretend it wasn't as obvious as it was. It's strange how betrayal doesn't always come with shouting or slammed doors. Sometimes it just walks past you, cool as ice, and pretends it's carrying laundry. But I saw it now. I saw everything. And suddenly, it wasn't just about lies anymore. It was about how comfortable she was living inside them. I think I expected drama. When I realized Iris was cheating on me, I imagined there'd be something cinematic about it. Texts full of passion, secret rendezvous in hotels, excuses that barely held together. But no, her lies were ordinary, boring, lazy even. That's what made them so much worse. After the red sweater incident, I started noticing other details. They were so small it's embarrassing how much they consumed me. Like how she suddenly started buying oat milk when she always gagged at the taste. Or how she started using a citrus-scented body wash when she used to joke that lemon made her feel like a kitchen countertop. These weren't upgrades. They were habits, someone else's. Subtle fingerprints of another man's routine embedded in our home. One night, I tested her. She came back from a team dinner, and I asked how it went. She said they ate Thai food at the place on Eddington Street. But I had called the restaurant 2 hours before, booked solid for a private event. When I pointed that out, she barely blinked, just shrugged and said, maybe it wasn't that place. I wasn't paying attention. Like her reality was too fluid for facts to matter. And I let it slide. You have to understand, I wasn't passive because I didn't care. I was paralyzed because I did. When you've built your life around someone, every lie they tell forces you to either confront the crumbling structure or pretend the cracks aren't there. And I was excellent at pretending. Until that Wednesday night. Iris had fallen asleep on the couch, phone in hand. I know I shouldn't have, but I picked it up. There were no messages. Nothing in her inbox. Her call log was suspiciously clean. But I checked her calendar app, and that's when things clicked. There was a recurring event on Wednesdays, simply titled Studio. I had never heard her mention a studio. Ever. I opened the location. It was a private apartment downtown. At first, I told myself she might be taking a pottery class. Or painting. But I already knew. She was meeting him. Here's where it got strange, though. Instead of confronting her, I added the address to my GPS and drove there the next day. I didn't go inside. I didn't knock. I just parked across the street and watched. It was almost surgical, the way she arrived, knocked twice, checked over her shoulder. The door opened, and she disappeared inside. 30 minutes passed. Then an hour. Then 2. I should have felt angry. But I didn't. I felt emptied out. Like she had stolen something from me slowly, over time, and I was just now realizing I'd been robbed. When she came home that night, she kissed me on the cheek like everything was fine. And I let her. Not because I forgave her, but because now, I wasn't playing defense anymore. I was planning something. Something she wouldn't see coming. The morning after I watched her walk into that apartment, I stood in the bathroom longer than usual, just staring at myself in the mirror. I don't know what I was expecting to see. Maybe guilt for spying. Maybe rage. But what I saw instead scared me more than anything. I looked calm. Too calm. Like a man who had already accepted he was disappearing. That calmness is what made me realize how far gone I was. How much of myself I had surrendered trying to keep a version of my life that no longer existed. Iris wasn't just cheating on me. She had hollowed out our life, like someone silently scraping out the inside of a fruit and placing it back on the shelf, perfectly intact on the outside. And I was the one who kept biting into it, pretending it still had flavor. I didn't tell anyone. Not my brother, not my coworkers, not even my best friend Jonah, who once swore he could spot a cheating partner from a mile away. I didn't want advice. I didn't want sympathy. I wanted control. And if I couldn't have control over her actions, then I needed control over what happened next. That same day, I called in sick and did something I hadn't done in years. I stayed home and observed. Like a guest in my own life, I walked through our house slowly, opening drawers, reading receipts, checking shared calendars. I wasn't looking for dramatic evidence. I knew what was going on. What I wanted was proof of how much of our life was built on fiction. It didn't take long. In the back of the kitchen drawer, under some old takeout menus, I found a second phone. A burner. The kind of phone that didn't back up to the cloud, didn't have a fingerprint lock, just a basic PIN. She used her birthday. I stared at it for a long time before turning it on. And when I did, It vibrated with two new messages. One from someone saved as E, another from Studio. The one from Studio read, "Thursday still good? Need to talk about what we said." L. I didn't know who L was. And suddenly, a thought hit me. What if this wasn't just an affair? What if it was more? What if she was planning to leave and just hadn't told me yet? But the message from E is what really made me sit down. "Iris, you promised. You said he'd be gone by now. Don't make me the villain if you're too afraid to do what you said." My breath caught. Gone. Me? It wasn't just cheating. It wasn't just emotional detachment. She was trying to erase me. That's when the shaking started. Not out of fear, but from the realization that I wasn't losing her. She had already let go of me a long time ago. Now the question was, how far was she willing to go to make it final? And how far was I willing to go to stop pretending I didn't see it coming? The plan was simple. Wait, watch, collect. That was all I had been doing for days, until today. Today, everything slipped, not because of something she did, but because of something she forgot to do. It was a Friday, around noon. I was home early, told my manager I had food poisoning, which wasn't far from the truth. My stomach had been in knots since I read that message from E. You promised. He'd be gone by now. I hadn't confronted Iris yet, mostly because I didn't know what I was going to say. There's a kind of paralysis that sets in when your entire life turns into a trap. You want to scream, run, fight, but all you can do is wait. And sometimes, waiting reveals more than action ever could. Iris had left for work in her usual robotic way. A kiss on the cheek. Have a good one. Her act was so polished I almost believed her again. Almost. But I didn't move after she left. I just sat in the kitchen, letting the silence settle. And that's when her iPad, forgotten on the counter, lit up with a notification. It was a voicemail transcription. iMessage voicemail, the kind that shows you the first few lines. The preview read, "Hey Iris, I get that you're scared, but you said he'd be out by this week. If you don't push, I will. He's holding you hostage in your own life, and it's pathetic. I'm tired of waiting." My mouth went dry. There it was, confirmation, not just of betrayal, but intent. This wasn't some accidental emotional affair or a confused heart. This was a plan. There was another man, someone she was actively conspiring with. And I wasn't just the obstacle. I was the enemy. I opened the full message. The voice was male, calmer than I expected, dangerous in its quiet confidence. "Iris, you're letting him win by hesitating. You told me you wanted to be free, that you felt like a prisoner in that house. You said he never made you feel seen. You said you felt like a ghost. That's what you called yourself, remember? A ghost." I didn't even realize I had started shaking until I almost dropped the tablet. She thought I made her feel invisible? The woman who hadn't looked me in the eyes during a conversation in over a year? The woman who came home full of stories she never bothered to finish, because I was just the background. She had rewritten the whole story in her head, cast herself as the victim and me as the cage. But this man, whoever he was, didn't just see her differently. He was actively feeding that narrative. He was pressuring her, molding her. Not a lover, a manipulator. Or worse, someone who believed his version of her more than I ever could. I sat down, replayed the message again. And then again. I wasn't angry. I was analytical. Cold. Because I finally saw the shape of what I was in. And it wasn't a marriage anymore. It was a countdown. And I had no idea how many seconds I had left. I wasn't planning to go through her things again. I'd already felt like enough of a ghost in my own house, haunting corners, listening to voices that didn't belong to me. But the voicemail from that man, his tone, his confidence, planted something dark in me. Not rage, not even heartbreak. It was curiosity. What else was being said about me when I wasn't around? So I waited. Another day, another evening of Iris coming home late, tossing her keys like nothing was wrong, asking if we had any almond milk, then going upstairs to shower before disappearing into bed without saying goodnight. The routine of a couple who hadn't fought in months, not because things were peaceful, but because the war had already been lost. When she left the next morning, I opened her laptop. I'd never done that before. I had boundaries once. But betrayal rearranges your definition of respect. At first, there was nothing. No emails. No notes. But then I checked her video call history. Not something people think to delete. And there it was. A Zoom call from just 3 nights ago, recorded to her drive. Automatically saved. Probably forgotten. The file was titled Project Harmony, Design Draft. I hit play. There she was, sitting in our bedroom, hair pulled back, pretending to be on a work call. But she wasn't presenting a design. She wasn't talking to colleagues. She was talking to him. The same voice from the voicemail. The man I still hadn't seen, but now knew too well. And the first words out of her mouth, captured like some sick accident of digital fate, were, "I'm so tired of saying his name like it still means something. My name, spoken like a curse." I froze. She went on, laughing, talking about how I still made coffee for her every morning, like it would fix something. How she couldn't stand the way I breathed through my nose when I read. How she wished I would just leave so she wouldn't have to be the one to do it. But he didn't laugh. No, this time he sounded annoyed. "Then why haven't you said anything? Why are you dragging this out?" "Because I feel bad," she whispered. "And because he's not dangerous. Just sad." That part hurt more than anything else. Not dangerous. Just sad. That was how she saw me. A man who wouldn't fight back. A man who had become background noise even in his own downfall. A man who was safe to betray because he wouldn't burn the house down. He'd just sit quietly in the rubble and apologize for the mess. I paused the video. I stared at my own reflection on the blackened screen. I didn't recognize the man looking back, but I finally understood what had to happen next. Because if she thought I was weak, predictable, and harmless, then she had never really known me at all. I spent the weekend in silence. I didn't bring up the video. I didn't mention the voicemail, the burner phone, the sweater, or the lies. I needed to be still. Not because I was unsure, but because clarity had arrived, and it deserved its moment. I finally saw our marriage for what it was. A chapter that had ended long before I ever realized the story was changing. By Monday morning, I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't broken. I was done. She came downstairs, half awake, scrolling on her phone like every morning. I had already packed a bag and left a printed note on the table. I didn't want a confrontation. I wanted dignity. She looked at me, puzzled. "What's this?" I smiled. Not fake, not forced, but honest. "It's freedom," I said. "Yours and mine." At first, she laughed like I was joking. Then she opened the note. Her face changed. I watched it happen in real time. Confusion, recognition, panic, and then something unexpected: relief. I don't know what I expected. Maybe tears. A scream. A last-minute apology. But she just sat down and didn't say a word. "I'm not going to ruin your life," I told her. "I'm going to leave it." And I did. I moved out that same day, not because I had nowhere to go, but because I finally understood that staying meant shrinking. And I wasn't going to shrink anymore. The weeks that followed weren't easy. I'd be lying if I said there weren't nights when I lay awake, wondering what I could have done differently, how it got so far. But every day, the silence got quieter. The hurt dulled, and something else replaced it. Peace. I started running again. I reconnected with old friends I'd quietly drifted from. I read books that weren't about saving marriages or decoding betrayal. They were about starting over. One day, a message popped up on my phone. From Iris. "I know I don't deserve it, but I hope you're okay. You didn't deserve any of it." I read it. I didn't reply. She was right. I didn't deserve it. But I deserved what I had now. Peace, truth, and the chance to begin again. That was the day I stopped being the man who was cheated on and started being the man who walked away with his soul intact. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't fight back. It's leave. And I did. With nothing, but everything I needed. Myself. Please like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. I read them all.